Wow. Thank you, Taryn, for saying something. I apparently just talked for 3.5 minutes and none of you heard a word because I had the wrong button pushed. It's one of those days. Well, good evening, everybody. I am glad you are here. Sorry for the false start there on this. You have found yourself in Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio. Glad that you are here. Glad that I am here, and glad that now you can hear me because apparently I was just pushing all kinds of wrong buttons and getting things set up. But now I can see that, yes, it is registering sound. It is registering all the wonderful things. So glad that you're here and glad that you're able to hear me now. So let's tell you what, we will just start this off with the ad read, and then I will let you know what we're going to be going through on tonight's show. IE Sports Radio is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar and high in protein. You can find them on their website, planetjerky.net. They offer free shipping on all orders of $50 and above. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. And we are also brought to you by Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations, and you're looking for that extra special touch. Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or friend, and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts is for you. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. Find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps or on Facebook at Seal the Deal Wax Seals. And for the last 9.5 years now, IE Sports Radio has brought you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Be sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with the latest in sports and with our shows. Also, check out our daily updated website, iesportsradio.com, for sports news, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each podcast, our IE Sports Radio community forum, and stop by the shop to check out the merchandise. Thank you for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And if you are listening live here on this Monday evening on Spreaker.com, hop on into the chat room. You will find Taryn Rodriguez, Ralph Calise, Mike Pat, and Wesley Trueblood in there. Good evening to each and every one of you. I want to start things off tonight with the Bears. The scouting combine was this past weekend, a very unique version of the combine. You know, the scouting combine as an annual localized, centralized event has been going on since the late 80s, since about 87. This is probably the most unique one that we've seen in a long time. And I think what we saw at this one this year is probably going to be more the direction that this event is going to take, where it's less and less about the star players and more about finding the depth or finding some of the secondary market players, the not the high end guys, but maybe the third, fourth, fifth best at their position, as opposed to the top 2 or 3 guys at their positions. Ironically enough, it started off as a way so that teams could get accurate, reliable medical information that they could share throughout with all the other teams in the league. And now the medical stuff is what a lot of the players have figured out that, I don't know that I want all 32 of you having that. I just want the 4 or 5 or 6 teams that are most likely to draft me to have that information. So what can we take away from the combine? Well, I think the first of all, from a Bears perspective, there is now no doubt in my mind about what the Bears are doing with the quarterback position. There's zero thought in my mind, concern or doubt in my mind anymore of what they are doing. They are staying at 1. They are taking Caleb Williams, and they're going to trade Justin Fields. That is the overwhelming takeaway from the event yesterday. Even though Williams didn't participate in any of the drills, he didn't give his medical information to all 32 of the teams, even though the Bears were only able to spend 20 minutes with him. They are going to take Caleb Williams. That is my biggest takeaway. Just every box that Williams could have checked over the weekend for the Bears, he did. If you listen to his pressers, he addressed a lot of the concerns that have come up with fans and with the media over the last 6, 8, 10 weeks. You're worried about his dad being too big of an influence in his life? Yes, he looks to his father for financial guidance. And yes, his father has had his best interests for him since, they decided they were going to go down this path. But it's Caleb who is driving the bus, not his father. You were worried about his size. He did his measurements. He comes in at 6'1" and 213 pounds. All right, he's smaller than Justin Fields, but he's a heck of a lot bigger than Bryce Young. His size should not be of any concern. You're worried about his hand size, 9 3/4 inches. I had to ask some people on that one. It was all right. Forgive me for not knowing the typical hand size. I have hands the size of a doll. I've never bothered to measure my hands, but my daughter is 6, and I think her hands are about as big as mine. So everybody has bigger hands than me. So I had to ask. It was all right. Is this a normal? Is this where does this come in? And it was that's on the larger side. Perfect. So fumbling shouldn't be a concern there. So the measurements he did, there's no concerns there. He didn't do the medical stuff. All right, he addressed that. He's got something to hide. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about that. Now, I love it. Now I'm getting, here's my hand size. Here's that. If I had a ruler here, I'd grab it right now and let you know. First, I'd have to ask how they officially do this. Let's talk about the medical for a minute, because I know that's one of the last for some people. He's got something to hide. Why doesn't he want teams having his medical? It's not that he doesn't want teams having his medical information. He understands the importance of that. I loved the way he put it. There are 32 teams. In his words, there are 32 of you. There's only one of me. Not all of you are going to get to draft me. So he doesn't see the need to just put it out there. And frankly, I don't have a problem with that. I get where he's coming from with that. You know, part of the combine, you go through it and you kind of, it's almost like a cattle auction where it's, you know, you line everybody, and especially that part of it where it's, you're doing the measurements and the medicals, where it's, all right, everybody drop down to your skivvies and go stand in line at this really long doctor's office, and off you go. Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to be part of that either, you know? So I get it. Is, look, if you're serious about drafting me, absolutely, I will do the medicals as part of those private workouts. Absolutely, because I understand why that's important to you. You want to make sure that I don't have a problem. But there's no reason, for example, there's no reason for the Kansas City Chiefs to know what Caleb Williams' heart rate is or what his body mass index is. They're not drafting him. You know, there's no reason for the Detroit Lions to have it, because even if they'd want to, they're not in position to draft him. There was, I heard a great tidbit from Brad Biggs, the Bears beat reporter Brad Biggs, this morning on the radio, where he was talking with some GMs, and there was a team that talked with Williams where the team person that he spoke with, I guess it was on anonymity, so it may not have been the GM. It's a great kid. Loved him. I have no idea why we talked to him. There's absolutely no way we're going to be in a position to draft him. You know, he knows where he's going. He knows he's going one. So I have no problem with him deciding to do that. Is it counterculture to the way it's been done for the last 36 years? Absolutely. You bet your butt it is. Is that going to scare some teams? Sure. I'm sure that it will. Change is always scary. I also think that this time of year, teams are looking to get scared. You know, I brought it up last week that this is the time of year where teams are actively they're trying to find a reason to not take somebody. And if you look for something long enough, you're going to find it. That would be my caution on that. You had Mike Pat bring it up perfectly in the chat. Yeah, it was the New York Giants approached Deion Sanders and said, hey, we want to interview you. And he was, guys, you're picking 7th. I'm not lasting that long. Don't waste your time. I'm not going to make it that far. So yeah, absolutely. You know, the Deion Sanders approach. Is it egotistical? Yeah. Is it defiant? You could construe it that way. Yeah, I liked how Wesley put it though here earlier in the chat though. It's not like this is the Ball family. You know, it's not like Lonzo Ball or Lorenzo Ball, their dad from the NBA. We know a little bit of that from when Lonzo briefly played for the Bulls. R.I.P. to Lonzo's knees. You know, so you're a lot of the concerns that you had with Caleb Williams hopefully got alleviated. There are still people, a lot of fans at this point mostly, a lot of fans who are still trying to find that reason to not like Caleb Williams. The best advice I can give you at this point is brace yourself, because the Justin Fields trade is happening. It's coming. And I think it's coming sooner rather than later. And here's why. Ralph brought up in the chat room earlier, he's upset that the Steelers have seemingly taken themselves out of the Justin Fields negotiation. Free agency is right around the corner, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here coming up. every day between now and the first round of the draft, Justin Fields' trade value drops for every day he remains a Bear. And especially when free agency opens, that begins a game of musical chairs, or the quarterback carousel. And we all remember from playing musical chairs, there's not enough chairs. There's not as many chairs as there are players. There's not going to, once free agency starts, there's going to be more quarterbacks available than there are legitimate starting opportunities. Kirk Cousins is hitting the open market. Potentially Baker Mayfield is hitting the open market. We just saw earlier today that Russell Wilson is hitting the open market, that the Broncos are just outright releasing him. If you're the Falcons or you're the Steelers or you're the Vikings, any one of these teams that's being mentioned in relation to a Justin Fields trade, there's other fish in the sea. So you do not want to wind up in a position where you're holding out for super high-end value for Justin Fields. I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want it to come off as if I don't want this to be a criticism of Ryan Poles. Because I think I think Poles has played this. He has played this hand as well as he possibly can. But at this point, everybody knows what's going to happen. And so to continue the subterfuge any longer, you're only hurting yourself at this point. Everybody knows what you're doing. Everybody knows that you're taking Williams at 1. So to try and, we might hang on to Fields. No, you're not. No, you're not. You are not hanging on to him anymore. Everybody knows you're not. So if you want to get the maximum value for him, and also your stated goal at the combine was to do right by him, then you want to get him moved now so that you can get him to his new city, get him acclimated with his new offense, his new offensive coordinator, and give him the best position to thrive there. And I genuinely hope he does. I will continue to root for Justin Fields wherever he winds up. And Mom, I see her in the chat room. I remember that team you mentioned a few months ago. That team, I'm not going to say it. That team is the one exception, and it's not even going to happen, so it doesn't matter. Any of the other 30 teams, it's fine. I'm rooting for him. I will genuinely root for him to knock it out of the park, make it to the Pro Bowl, succeed. I want to see that happen because he is a genuinely fantastic guy, great leader, fantastic in the locker room, and just unfortunately enough of the football things didn't work that you're in a position to upgrade. You have to. So that's what you're going to do. Let's see here. Justin Fields to the Falcons for a second and then a pick swap of 9 and 8. I don't hate that deal. I'm a little surprised. Yeah, I don't hate that deal. The biggest thing then for that deal is because then I think absolutely then you're in a position to get one of these wide receivers, most likely Rome Odunze out of Washington, if you make that swap. I know there's some concern about whether or not Odunze will make it to 9. If the Bears were to swap and go to 8 instead of 9, I think they wind up with a better chance of landing him. So if that's really what your target is. And I wanted to get into that a little bit since one is locked in. Put it out of your minds. Caleb Williams is going to be a Bear with the number 1 overall pick. So now what do they do with number 9? Number 9. There are so many directions they could go with that pick. I mentioned Rome Odunze. He performed very well at the Combine. Had himself an excellent Combine. Benefited from the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr., all he did was privately speak to a half dozen or so teams, did no workouts, no measurements, none of that stuff. Malik Neighbors only did interviews. He didn't do any of the workouts. So Odunze absolutely benefited from being the best wide receiver to actually go out there. But Rome Odunze would be a wonderful addition at number 9. That would give the Bears an incredible 1-2 punch at wide receiver. Easily the best wide receiving starting combo they've had since Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey 10 years ago. I loved Alshon Jeffrey, little mini Marshall. I loved him. Great. That catch against the Cowboys, that's the greatest catch I've ever seen a Bears wide receiver make. Anyway, easily that would be the best wide receiver combo that the Bears have had in a decade. One of the offensive linemen, if you're talking Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, there is nothing that he did this past weekend that made you think he couldn't be an amazing left tackle for 7, 8, 10 years in the NFL. I like that. I like that thought too. It's not as sexy of a pick because obviously, you're not gonna. I joked during the week that is why do they still make the offensive lineman run the 40? If an offensive lineman is having to dash 40 yards during a play, something has gone horribly wrong. Don't make those poor guys do that. But shoring up the trenches would be a huge boost to the Bears. So getting someone like a Joe Alt or the offensive lineman that I'm going to learn how to pronounce his name properly before I say it on here, out of Penn State, would also be a tremendous pickup. A solid quality option there. I've seen Dallas Turner, the pass rusher out of Alabama. I've heard his name pop up. I'm less excited about that simply because if you're going to go defensive line, I'd honestly prefer that they go tackle as opposed to pass rusher. If they could go that way, just because the 3 technique spot is so important to this defense and they really haven't addressed. I know Gervon Dexter kind of stepped into that role this past season and it grew on him as the season went on. He showed progress, but to still have somebody who has done it and is just more naturally gifted towards that position. Newton out of Illinois, I don't know that he necessarily makes sense at 9. You'd probably, if that's what you're thinking, you could probably do a trade back 3 or 4 spots, get some extra picks and go that route. So I'm not as excited about either Dallas Turner or Leatu Atu out of UCLA, but those are very viable defensive linemen, excuse me. Those are very viable options there at 9. Yeah, and Mike brings up a good point. Depending on what they get in the Justin Fields trade, you could potentially look at getting a wide receiver in the second round. There are still plenty of guys, Xavier Worthy out of Texas. Holy cow, he just flew up draft boards because he looked like he was shot out of a cannon when he did his 4.21 seconds or whatever it was. There's some value in the second round, assuming you can get a second round pick. There's some value there at some wide receivers. You don't need an alpha male in the room. You have that in DJ Moore. You need to simply improve the room. You don't need the star. You just need a quality wide receiver. Oh, and Taryn trying to help me out here with the pronunciation for the Penn State tackle, Olu Fashanu. I'm going to go with it for now. I want to make sure that I actually am pronouncing it correctly, so I'm going to practice that. Just for now, the Penn State tackle, and until I learn his name properly, I'll leave it as that for now. But you've got some wonderful options there at 9. I would still prefer, if they stay at 9, I would prefer to go offense as opposed to defense, just because that's still where the bigger holes overall on the team are. Brock Bowers is an interesting wild card in this. He's the tight end out of Georgia. That to me is a very interesting, intriguing. He's, on the one hand, you just signed Cole Kmet to an extension. So do you really want to spend a top 10 pick on a tight end? But they're two very different tight ends. Bowers really is more of a wide receiver in a tight end's body. He doesn't give you the blocking. Cole Kmet gives you both. He's a tremendous inline blocker, as well as he'll skirt out and give you some passing options. Brock Bowers would be more of just, he's going out to run routes. He's not necessarily staying in and blocking. So that's a different role. Still, for me, I don't know that that's the direction I would want to go right now for the Bears. If it's me right now at number 9, I think if Adunza is there, that's the way I'm leaning right now. I think Mike brought it up earlier in the chat. The first 3 picks are quarterbacks. Boom, boom, boom. And then I still feel like the number 4 pick at this point is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. So you're talking between 5 through 8, those 4 picks. Will Adunza survive that? Well, you're talking, you've got another wide receiver on the board that objectively is a better prospect than Adunza in Malik Neighbors. So if a team is looking wide receiver, I would expect at this point that Neighbors would go first. You've got the 2 offensive linemen. You've got Bowers, the tight end, and you've got those 2 pass rushers. So do you want to go with the 3rd best guy in his position group in the top 10, or would you rather go with one of the top 2 guys, or, the top guy in their position group inside the top 10? That's what teams are going to have to ask themselves. So I absolutely believe Adunza could be there at 9 for the Bears. We'll know more as we get closer, of course. But right now, I feel like Adunza absolutely could be there at 9. If he's there, that's my pick. If he's gone, then, and I'm not trading out, I really like going with one of the tackles at 9. either the tackle from Penn State or Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. No offense to Braxton Jones. He's done remarkably well for where he was drafted, where he was from, what was expected of him. But I'd feel a lot more comfortable if Braxton was the swing tackle going into this season. And then, oh man, to have your quarterback, your left tackle, and your right tackle all on rookie deals, man, you could be set up there. Man, you could be set up there for a long time to just have money to throw wherever you want to. Let's talk about throwing some money around a little bit, shall we? Because free agency is right around the corner here for the Bears. They have to make a decision on Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson has not signed. Reportedly, he's out in California, which would make it seem like he's probably going to get hit with the franchise tag. But the feeling is right now that Jalen Johnson's not going anywhere. They might wind up having to use that tag on him, but then they'll use that as a stepping stone to negotiate a long-term deal. So I feel confident that Jalen Johnson will be back. Wesley brings up that with in that money situation, yeah, you could afford to go crazy on a running back spending at that point now, or you can get one in the 6th round and pay him nothing. And find somebody that'll run for 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, the Bears, they've got $80 million reportedly to spend in free agency because the cap went up more than anybody expected it to. Meanwhile, the New Orleans Saints were just cheering like crazy when that happened. They went from being 40 million over to only 20 million over. I would look, the position that's going to be fascinating, I think, in free agency for the Bears, do they get a defensive tackle? I'm sure they'll pick up some defensive ends, but the quality guys aren't going to hit the market. They're just not. They're just not. Maybe Chris Young will, and maybe you can partner him back up with Montez Sweat. Antoine Winfield out of Tampa Bay excites me so much. I don't think he's going to. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to franchise tag him, which is too bad because he would be perfect for the free safety role. But Chris Jones or Christian Watkins out of Kansas City and Miami, respectively, if one or both of those guys, and it sounds like that Watkins is going to hit the free agent market, that the Dolphins have told him they're not going to tag him. That could be interesting. That could be very interesting if they could get one of those guys to shore up the 3 technique spot. Because that's something they have not been able to do since they tried to get Larry Ogunjobi and then he failed his physical. So that's an interesting, intriguing spot to me to see what they do there. They're more available. Wesley, are you talking about pass rushers there when you're talking about more available in free agency? Because if it's pass rushers, it's usually quantity over quality. It's usually that, sure, we can get somebody that, will get 4 or 5 in the span of 17 games. A 3 technique. Okay. 3 technique. Okay. Yeah, because the pass rushers, it's usually, sure, there's guys that might give you a few, but usually the pass rushers, there's a reason those guys hit the market in the first place. And it's not because teams couldn't figure out how to pay him. It's because teams didn't want to pay them. So yeah, Watkins didn't get tagged. Chris Jones is going to be available. There's going to be some intrigue there at the 3 technique. Well, look for them to be active there. Of course, center is a position that the Bears desperately need to make a move on and do something. We'll see what happens there. The cupboard's not as deep. I think I was looking on Spot Rack the other day, and Cody Whitehair was listed as like the 2nd or 3rd best center available in free agency. He was, oh no. Oh no. We just saw that. That was not good. That was not good. We don't want that again. So there's not as much there, but the Bears, if they shouldn't let money be the thing that stops them from signing somebody. They have they can afford to front load some deals if they need to get some of these guys, be it a 3 technique or a center or potentially a safety. Safety is a weak spot in this draft, so we'll see what might become available in free agency here. But those are some spots that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Plus, of course, your typical depth. You can never have enough running backs. You can never have enough corners. You can never have enough linebackers. Those special teams kind of spots. They'll make some depth signings. I do wonder if they're going to be a little less active this year in the hopes of being able to get some compensatory picks in the 2025 draft, because the Bears didn't get any compensatory picks this year because, they signed Nate Davis. They brought in Tremaine Edmonds and Edwards, and they were very active players in free agency this past year. So that meant they didn't get any compensatory selections. I do wonder if that's going to enter into their calculus at all for this free agency period of will they intentionally back off and maybe stop themselves short of signing some guys, especially, again, if they're able to flip Justin Fields and get a pick or 2 to kind of round out their class. Because while, yes, the Bears have got 6 picks, they go all the way from 9 until 75 until they pick again. So they've got a long stretch there where they're not doing anything in the draft. So if they can pick up 1 or 2 more draft picks and feel like they can use that to round out the bottom of their roster, I do wonder if they'll be a little less active in free agency in the hopes that then next year they'll get some compensatory picks. I don't know if that's entering into their calculus or not, but it'll be another thing to keep an eye on. So lots to keep an eye on with the Bears as we now get into we've passed the combine. We are full steam ahead into lying season for the GMs. We are very, very active in everything NFL. Lots to keep an eye on, lots to keep track of for sure over the next couple weeks. All right, we are going to take a little bit of a break. We are way over. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then when we come back, we're gonna set up some other things on the show here. I want to talk about some football for a moment. The Chicago Fire also inhabit Soldier Field. They played over the weekend, and it didn't go so great. But we will discuss some football, and then we're also going to set up some bracketology that we'll get to pay off here in the next coming weeks. You are listening to Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Yo, what's going down? This is Spaced Out Sports with your host, J-Man, giving you all Houston sports straight from the source, brought to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. In this show, we're going to talk about everything Houston through and through, and everything. We're going to talk about the surrounding areas. We're going to talk about local sports, everything in Texas in general, mainly Houston, but we're going to talk about everything in the sports world. I want to hear from y'all. Y'all definitely going to hear from me. We're going to go from anything all over, from it's football to MMA to everything. Let's have a good show. I'm looking forward to hearing from the city. Y'all make sure y'all just check me out every Wednesday right here at Spaced Out Sports, brought to you by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Adam Credit with you here for about another 10 minutes or so left on the program tonight before we turn things over to Taryn Rodriguez and Set Point, get you caught up on everything happening in the volleyball world. So we talked a ton there about the Chicago Bears to open up the show. We're now going to transition to something both similar yet radically different. Let's talk about the men in red, the Chicago Fire, the other footballers at Soldier Field. They had their home opener over the weekend, hosting the Cincinnati Football Club. Friend of the program and sometime contributor Tyler Snipes was at the game. He texted me the day of to let me know he was going to be in town. Had a good time at Soldier Field there. A better time than the Fire did, unfortunately. They wound up falling to Cincinnati in the match 2-1. The Fire got off to a little bit almost reckless of a start. They were trying to play they were being very hyper aggressive at the early start of the match, trying to get a goal, trying to get themselves off to a quick start, and it led to some problems, some very bad turnovers in their own end that could have gone very worse for them than it actually turned out. They were fortunate to only give up 2 goals in the match. Unfortunately, they could not get the win. They could not get a regulation play goal. Sheridan Sakiri did get the lone goal for the Fire. It came on a penalty kick, so they did at least get a goal. They were not shut out on the match, but they did lose the match. That means in their 2 matches of the season, they have yet to have a win. They played to a draw in their first match before then losing their home opener this past weekend. So just 1 point on this early season for the Fire after missing out on the playoffs a season ago. As they get ready to get started for this season, it's not looking like it's going to be too terribly strong for this team. They might make a push for the playoffs a little bit. They did make some flashy signings before the season, but it's gonna be very interesting to see how that pans out for them. Bringing in a couple of new guys, and unfortunately I had the names right in front of me, and then they ran away. There they go. Hugo Cypress and Kellen Acosta to try to add some offense to the team, but it still feels very much, at least to me, at any rate, like probably the regular season is all it's going to be for this club. I still would not expect that they would get much further than the standard season this year with the Chicago Fire. We'll keep an eye on them, though. It'll be something certainly to talk about this summer, this season, but I don't know how far they're going to get. Taryn trying to set up his show here. Some excellent news from over the weekend. The Loyola Chicago men's volleyball team upset number 7 Ohio State this past weekend, and then they took on Purdue Fort Wayne they took on Purdue Fort Wayne on Thursday, swept them 3-0, and then upset number 7 Ohio State in 5 matches. That moves the Ramblers up to number 11 in the nation in the rankings. So good for them, Loyola. I think we're going to be talking about Loyola a little bit coming up here in the next couple of weeks also, as we get ready for the National Men's Basketball Tournament. The Ramblers, as we sit here right at the end of the regular season, are doing very well in the Atlantic 10. They had some nice wins over the weekend. I'm getting them pulled up here real quick as they currently sit here on Saturday. It was Friday night, The Ramblers hosted number 21 Dayton and won that game 77-72. So as we sit here right now with basically this week and next, this week left to go in the regular season, the Ramblers currently sit 21-8 overall and 13-3 in the Atlantic 10. They trail only Richmond for the top seed in the Atlantic 10. They are a game behind Richmond. I do believe that in the head-to-head this season, I do believe that Richmond won their head-to-head games. As I'm quickly scanning through, Richmond won the game at Gentile Arena back in January, and I don't think I believe they just played the one time. That is correct. They just played the one time. So yes, Richmond does have the head-to-head over them, and with just 2 games left in the regular season. So most likely, Loyola's going to go into the A10 tournament next week as either the 2 or the 3 seed. They've got a big game against Davidson coming up here on Wednesday night. They win that one. That should lock them into, at the very least, one of the top 3 seeds, which will then advance them all the way to the quarterfinal in the Atlantic 10 tournament. Looking elsewhere real quick, and part of the reason I'm doing this is because next week we will be doing a lot of bracketology talk, as my friend and frequent guest here on the program, Matthew Garner, will be on to talk all things bracketology. We'll be going through all the relevant teams here. Of course, we'll be talking Illinois as well as Loyola. We will also be talking Northwestern. We will bring up if DePaul will ever be relevant ever again. I don't think so at this point. I think that program is just going to die. So, but as we're sitting here too, Illinois and Northwestern are currently the 2nd and 3rd seeds overall in the Big Ten. Illinois at this point feels pretty much a lock for that 2 spot. They've got a huge game tomorrow night, though, against Purdue. If the Fighting Illini want any shot at the number 1 spot overall in the Big Ten tournament, they need to take that one tomorrow night against the Boilermakers. And then they finish things up against Iowa on Sunday. They'll finish up their regular season. As for Northwestern will be out in East Lansing on Wednesday night, taking on Michigan State before finishing up their regular season on Saturday, hosting the Golden Gophers of Minnesota. 3 is probably as high as Northwestern can hope to finish in the Big Ten, but getting those wins will help hold off Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Iowa from creeping up on them at all in the standings. So we will have all that plus more. So if you are at all a person that likes to fill out their brackets, that likes to try to get an edge on whether it's your office pool or your bragging rights with your buddies or whatever it is, you definitely want to tune in. Each of the next 2 weeks, we will be previewing what the bracket most likely is going to look like, what the seeding will be, and then once we find out what the seeds are, we will go through and figure out how best to fill out your bracket. So get ready for some serious bracketology each of the next 2 weeks. That is going to do it for the show here tonight. Whew! Big shout out and thank yous, of course, once again to our sponsors, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and to Seal the Deal Wax Seals. Find them Instagram at Planet Jerky or at Seal the Deal Wax Stamps. You can also go to Planet Jerky's website, planetjerky.net. Big thank you to Larry B., the czar and overlord of all things IE Sports Radio. You do a ton of work behind the scenes, sir. It does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. Thank you to everybody who hung out in the chat room with me tonight. Patty Back snuck in there at the last minute. Taryn Rodriguez, he's going to be up next with Set Point. Mike Pat, Ralph Calise, Kathy Karnick, and shout out to the birthday man himself, Wesley Trueblood. Happy birthday, sir. And thank you for hopping in the chat room on your birthday. Appreciate that. Hope it's a good one. Hope it's enjoyable. Coming up next, it is Taryn Rodriguez and Set Point, breaking down everything happening in the world of volleyball, professional, collegiate, amateur, you name it, he's got it. For IE Sports Radio and Chi-Town Weekly, I am Adam Karnick. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time, whether it was live here tonight or you're listening later on as a podcast. Thank you for taking the time to make this part of your week. I really do appreciate it. Next week, we will be doing lots of bracketology. You do not want to miss it. Until then, be safe, be healthy. We will see you next time.